Hello, everyone. It's good to see you. Hope everyone is having an amazing week so far. Happy Friday. Good to see you, Molly. Good to see you, Mommers. May the force be with you. Thank you, all of us that are here joining us today to discuss this reaction video that we wanted to do, you guys, because it's not very often that prosecutors speak about a case, especially a case such as the Ruby Franke case and the Jody Hildebrandt criminal case of aggravated child abuse. Those were the felonies that were prosecuted in those cases. And I thought it was important to bring to you guys the prosecutor's comments. And I thought it would be kind of fun to react together and see what in the literal hell is actually going on with everything. So thank you so much for joining us. If you're just coming in, make sure you like and subscribe so that we can tell the algorithm that a lot of people are wanting to do a lot more to advocate for kids. So let's get these videos exposed far and wide so that no one has a chance to play dumb. So that's what I want you guys to help us with. You know, it's like when the facts aren't exposed, all that happens is that people play dumb. So we need to get the facts exposed, and we need to get those that hold the power to actually change the reality of what we keep uncovering every day here, all of you that join us on these lives for these in-depth analysis that we discuss, in our opinion, what we're seeing and what we are actually advocating for and reacting to. So this is the Ruby Franke prosecutor tells all. So let's see what he says, you guys.
1512. I just had a 12-year-old boy show up here at my front door asking for help. And he's said he just came from a neighbor's house, and he's emaciated. He's got tape around his legs. He's hungry and he's thirsty.
Need someone immediately.
You come in, my buddy. I'm a police officer. I go for you need me. Hey. Hey, I'm Sergeant Colby. I'm going to just get a few pictures. Are you okay with that?
Ruby and Jody were arrested and eventually charged with 6 counts of aggravated child abuse. Clark says his office wasn't familiar with either women and was shocked with the response the case brought. Had you ever heard of her before that?
I hadn't, and nobody who has worked on this case from the law enforcement side was aware of it that I talked to either. So we were all kind of oblivious that we would get this media storm on this case.
Nearly right away, Clark's.
So isn't that great, you guys, that multi-million follower momfluencers could be getting a head start of the prosecutors, doing them a huge solid, since this is all information that was on the public record, doing them a huge solid since all manner of people that were watching YouTube, just like you guys are here, that did sign up to watch what this mom was, you know, pitching, she was teaching through her channel. And imagine so many horrific parenting examples is all that she was pitching. So nobody knew her. We don't know anybody. And it's like Jody Hildebrandt, her own niece, had already gone to the police and had already called out what Jody was doing. Imagine nobody gave a literal F when that happened. Imagine it's taken the photos and the video that we just saw again for the 10th billion time, and I had to make a decision to actually show it to you guys again, because I think it's very important that we see the state in what that child had to show up saving himself for anyone in this country to lift a finger, because there is no investigations happening. Children are being left to fend for their damn selves. That's what this is literally giving. Help yourself, fend for yourself. You know, if anybody tries to advocate for you on YouTube, nobody will care because we will all be very oblivious. Imagine that investigations require people pulling strings, going, this doesn't make sense. This woman is 2.5 million followers on YouTube, and all this video evidence of all these horrible pitches that she's literally pitching glorified child abuse. But in the meantime, you know what? We're all just very oblivious about it all. Laura, purity culture causes this nonsense religious BS. Some people are not meant to be parents. Well, I agree with you, Laura, that some people are not meant to be parents, but I think what would send a stronger message out is, if you F around, you will find out, right? Because people are going to continue being parents. And the only thing that is going to stop them to think about it twice, look at those consequences. Do I really want to be looking at that type of consequence for myself for abusing my kids to this degree? I mean, no one is pitching to have a situation where the government has full oversight of parents, but imagine that there's literally no investigation happening. Imagine that there's a million things that can make no sense, can be a million reports out. Imagine that if they would have done something when Jody Hildebrand's own niece left, this would have never even happened. Jody and Ruby could have not taken place. But I guess, you know, when the other niece escaped, she wasn't 12 and she wasn't wearing, you know, all the scars that this little kid had to show up with in order for him to see a shred of justice. Imagine he had to come up with the idea to call the police. I mean, what type of help are these kids really getting? Because it's giving, go help yourself and better luck next lifetime. Right about now, that's what I think the kids in America are being told. Better luck next lifetime. Save yourself.
Team at the Washington County Attorney's Office was on the case.
So I was hearing about it probably the day after the arrests. Our special victim prosecutor team was working with officers the day of. So they're getting calls, hey, we're working on warrants. We've got a crazy child abuse case. And so our office was involved that first day and having those communications back and forth with Detective Bate. But I wasn't really aware of it until the next day, as we're talking about, you know, what's going on, how are we going to handle this?
And almost right away, the case stood out.
We cover child abuse cases, right? Like, unfortunately, child abuse is something that happens in all the communities in our country. And it's something we should always be speaking out against and trying to stop, right? In our office's institutional memory, we can only think of one case that is comparable to this. And that's with, 15 prosecutors' collective experience. Right? So immediately this case didn't feel normal on the, whoa, this is an awful case perspective. And for better or for worse, this case was also felt different to all the people doing the investigative work, because statistically, crime occurs and is reported more often in low-income communities, right?
Statistically, crime is reported more often in lower income communities. Isn't that great, you guys? That apparently, low income communities is where the crimes are happening. Imagine all it takes is for you to be a billionaire a la Jeffrey Epstein, a la P. Diddy, a la Scientology, a la Nickelodeon, a la Troubled Teen Industry. And all of a sudden, statistically, that's not where it happens, because look at the multi-billion-dollar building. It looks so beautiful. It's in such a great neighborhood. You know, that doesn't really happen here, right? Because sadists are just what? Low-income people. So prosecutors of the United States, if y'all are of the same attitude and viewpoint as this prosecutor that purports that this case, it's so unique, it's so shocking, it's so out of the ordinary, damn, we're in trouble. Imagine how much trouble we really are at if prosecutors that have to advocate for the rights of children are really going to go with the pitch. Well, it really just statistically happens more in low-income areas. And, you know, the low-income people don't have the money to hire big shot attorneys. So, you know, we really can get our conviction rates up. We can get our statistics up, says the prosecutor. So if you're low income, you have a shitty attorney or none, then we'll prosecute you, because then we'll get a conviction. So then our rating will be really great. Then everyone's going to be so happy at the end. Oh my God, look how much amazing stuff is being done by our prosecutors. My God. But yeah, so statistically, you know, since the Fort Harrison Hotel is in a very nice part of downtown Clearwater, then trafficking and abuse of minors probably not happening there, right, you guys? Probably not happening there because it's not in the right location, and it doesn't look like the roach-infested pitches that they always try to say child trafficking is. Oh yeah, someone grabbing you and taking you to a roach-infested motel, and everyone's so scared, and everyone... Imagine you can do it at a luxury 5-star hotel. Imagine you could do it at a multi-million-dollar exclusive neighborhood. Imagine if you are that sadist, then as long as you got money, guess what? Good luck getting caught. Good luck getting caught, because you know what? Prosecutors aren't really that aware, and they find it really weird, and they find it really shocking.
It's not that often that you have, you know, a $2 or $3 million home in a like super secluded subdivision.
I mean, imagine, you guys, imagine this is the facade that somebody goes, oh no, look, that looks like luxury to me. That looks like luxury. The backdrop is so gorgeous. It looks so beautiful in there. Oh no, this is really great. This is wonderful. Look at that.
Where you're having like, you don't get domestic violence calls to that community very often, right? So that
You don't get domestic violence called to that community very often. I mean, you guys, I can only pull from my background as an L. Ron Hubbard investigative person that was told to look and not to listen. So if calls are coming out of these communities that look really nice and not a lot of calls are coming out, imagine that had already been police oversight on this woman for years. For years. She should have already been on their radar. There was already a child that left before. So imagine that this is all these kids had to rely on. And imagine that, you know, there's not a lot of other examples of prosecutorial wits showing up. Imagine that.
felt different, the severity felt different, and obviously the media coverage felt different.
Clark says the
The media coverage felt different. Interesting.
First indication that the case would take the world by storm was Ruby and Jody's first appearance. It was supposed to be held virtually, but too many viewers from across the globe trying to watch caused the link to crash for everyone tuning in.
So we were getting ready to do the arraignments on these cases, and I got a call from the jail, who we work with a lot, right? So I get a call from the jail, and they say, "Hey, we can't log on to the system." And so we called the court, and the court said, "Yeah, it's full. Like, there's no, it has like, I don't know, 1,000, 1,500 people can be logged in to watch what the court streams." And our courthouse had never had it be full before. And that was when we kind of had an indication, oh, there's a lot more interest in this than we'd ever anticipated there would be.
It wasn't until at least a month after their arrests that Clark realized what he was working with.
So those things all rolled in, most of it within the first month. The jailhouse calls obviously continued through sentencing. And then there was additional evidence that was gathered through interviews. And as we're trying to wrap our head around, I don't know if like one of the things that we released are the Kevin Franke interviews, right? Like as time went on and people kind of wrapped their head around what was going on, we were able to get better information from interviews, from people as to what had happened, who had been where, kind of a thing. So it really was about 2 months before we really felt like we wrapped our head around what was the relationship between Ruby and Jody, what was the motive behind all this abuse.
Let's talk about that, the relationship between Ruby Franke and Jody Hildebrand. And you've been very close to the case, and your team has been covering it for months and going deep into the investigation. How would you describe their relationship?
I describe, in my mind, I see Ruby as a religious alkalite, like a blind follower of Jody. And I don't think, like initially we were like, what is this relationship? Is there more there than a business or a friendship? I don't think there was, right? I think that this is two people where Jody is saying, hey, I had a dream last night from God, and this is what we need to do today, or this is what we need to do we need to move, we need to discipline these kids, whatever it is.
Well, isn't that great, you guys? We need to discipline these kids in case these prosecutors fail to get the memo, fail to see the evidence, fail to see that there was no disciplining happening. When you have a child bounded, tied up, and held up against their will, really do think if you can call that a discipline. Really do think if that person is conversing with a so-called God. Really do think that for a second. I mean, you guys, in what world is this man capable of confronting evil? It's called they were committing a felony. A blind religion. Did you not get the part where she was abusing the kids on YouTube? Did you not get the part that there was a change.org petition put out to please someone do something to help these kids? And do you see, guys, like, imagine the plight that Scientology kids have. If all of these things have been done and law enforcement has been so lazy, because this is what this is giving, lazy. Oh, you know what? That's too hard. You know what? Let's wait for a child to really have to save themselves, and then we'll come in. We'll come in with all the resources to really help the kids. But what about when they could have been pulling strings, where they could have been finding out information? Like, why do we always get this thing about how it's so hard to get anything prosecuted, especially if the client is rich, which is what these prosecutors don't want to tell anybody. That's why they don't want to go against Scientology. Because, oh, no, it's going to be too many lawyers that we're going to have to deal with. That's going to make our job hard. And you know what? Better luck next lifetime for those rich kids. We were rich kids. We were multi-billionaires. Did anyone miss the part where we were consigned over to these people at the hotel at the age of 15? So yes, my daddy David Miscavige, real rich. My daddy, David Miscavige, able to call out attorneys to go and defend him against anything he wanted done inside of the hotel. Because what type of literal chance could I have to defend myself against Mike Rinder, against Debbie Boykin, against Debbie Cook, against Angie Trent, against all of these multi-billionaire executives? Remember, they were getting $50 a week, but they had a slush fund where billions were being tapped to willy-nilly call out, oh, who should I call right now? Monique. I need you, Monique. I need to tell you this, Monique. I need to tell you that, Monique. Oh, yeah, there's another child here that's been abused, Monique. What do we do now? Oh, call more attorneys? Oh, should we call more attorneys? Let's get more attorneys involved. Were the attorneys being called for the kids, or were the attorneys being called for Scientology handlers, proteges of L. Ron Hubbard? Leave it in the chat for who the attorneys were getting called inside of the hotel. Because maybe the FBI will start literally connecting a single dot. So you guys tell me what you think. Were the attorneys being called to help kids inside of the hotels when they were getting involved, or were they helping themselves? Did they have an incentive to help any child that had been, consigned, emancipated from their parents? Imagine I got emancipated at 15 without knowing what in the hell I was doing. Imagine no law oversaw, no court of the United States oversaw me getting emancipated. Imagine it all happened with the signature on a piece of paper from a hotel that Debbie Cook was running. So imagine no one goes and helps any of those kids, just like we see here in this case. Nobody went and helped them.
And Ruby was to a point in her life that she had separated herself from her husband, her extended family, her adult children. Like, she was just completely isolated. And so it was her minor children, and Jody were basically her contacts. And
I'm sorry. It's called Ruby is a full-grown adult. She made choices. You see what all these prosecutors forget? That adults do consent, that adults do make choices. They make decisions. Oh, you know what would be a great idea now that I got called out on YouTube and my channel is going defunct? Let me go find this other woman that really also resonates with my strict parenting style, aka the kink of these sadists to have their way with underage kids. So in case this prosecutor didn't get that memo of it's not some bamboozling idiot, Ruby Franke, who had no clue about anything, was not influenced by her own damn self. Ruby goes and finds an ally, someone that thinks like her. Oh, you also abuse kids? Oh, you and I? Oh, great. Oh, you have a nice house here? Good, let's do it here, because the police will never come here, because you know what? They usually don't get the calls from here. So you know what? It's going to be fine. No one's going to come. Let's build a vault. Let's build a vault. Why not? No one's going to come. No one's going to suspect that multimillionaires do anything, because you know what? Why would multimillionaires be sadists? Disgusting, kinky AF sadists. But imagine that all a prosecutor has to hear is like, oh, well, she cited God, so she must have been real religious, because as she was sadistically, literally handcuffing the kids, putting weights on their literal legs, she must have really been thinking she was getting closer to God. Imagine that. Imagine the stupidity.
So that's kind of how I see that relationship having, and I fully believe that's how that relationship worked, is Ruby was just waiting for Jody to tell her what Jody was thinking or feeling on any given day, and then willing to go forward and do that.
You know who else was waiting to be told what to do? The women that went and murdered people from Charles Manson. So Imagine that, yes, when you're a conspiracy racketeering little disgusting illegal sham of abusing minors, imagine that, yeah, Ruby was, tell me what to do, Jody. I can't wait for you to tell me to lock them up. I can't wait for you to tell me how to abuse them more. Because you know what? She wasn't putting down that she was doing it like that on her YouTube. In fact, she's escalated now that she's not being watched, now that she's got an accomplice, now that they're doing it together. These predators like doing it in groups, you guys. Stop pretending that they all just go to a room and they just do it by themselves. They want accomplices. Ask P. Diddy how many accomplices he wanted around him. Ask Ghislaine Maxwell how many accomplices she wanted around her. Ask Scientology how many accomplices they needed around them. This is not just happening in a vacuum. This is not just happening like, you know, the more they get together, the more of them that think alike, the more safe they feel. Racketeering 101. How do you think all of these people get compromised and all of a sudden then everyone's doing it? And well, oh, they're doing it, we're doing it, she's doing it, everyone's doing it. So it must not be that we're doing anything unhinged or wrong, right?
With that in mind, what do you think was Jody's motivation then in instructing Ruby to do these terrible things?
That one is harder. Like because we deal with cases where we've had like people do awful things in the name of religion, right? And so you can kind of see like the followers. But when you have the ringleader who is just making stuff up to get people to like, I don't know if it's a power trip. I don't know if it's like narcissistic personality disorder. You know, I don't know what it was that would lead Jody to think that. I mean, one of the things that Jody really wanted to do was to buy a ranch property in Arizona and move these kids out to the middle of nowhere.
So once again, you guys, what is it with these people and isolating minors? Troubled teen industry? Yes. Scientology? Yes. Jeffrey Epstein? Yes. What do they all have in common? Could it be ranches out in the middle of nowhere where they go and take the kids to get them abused? Does the troubled teen industry have a ranch? Yes. Does Scientology have children ranches? Yes. Did Jeffrey Epstein have a ranch? Yes. And an island too. So imagine island, ranches. These two people want to get what? A ranch. Another multi-million-dollar gorgeous ranch. Because you know what? The FBI ain't showing up there. Not great.
They could discipline them further.
And then, I mean, again, you guys, I see that he used air quotes, discipline them. Do you know how outrageous for kids that didn't have the chance to have arm's length, that had the front row seat at the dysfunction, that were used as pawns in the scheme themselves? Scientology never disciplined us. They were using us sadistically, bondaging us, torturing us, committing felonies on a daily basis on us. So all these watered down, washed up, whitewashing terms that these men who apparently have never been abused themselves. So I guess they just have to be told and rely on giving everyone the benefit of the doubt because they just don't see how people can be that evil. Doesn't matter how much evidence they have. The ropes were not enough. The handcuffs were not enough. The emaciated body of a 12-year-old child was not enough. The little girl that was in the closet, unable to speak, was not enough. When in the hell were children being disciplined? Where? How is discipline even being used to describe the state that those children saved themselves? They're their own heroes. They're their own heroes, you guys. And I'm sorry that you'll see later on why I'm saying this, because everybody gives themselves pats in the back. But you know what? 12-year-old kid saved his damn self and his little sister. He's the hero. No one else is the hero in this story. Everyone else dumped the responsibilities on him. It took him to rescue himself and his little sister. So stop patting yourselves in the back, prosecutors that think you do a lot, but you know what? You're doing nothing because the abuse already took place. So what good are you if you cannot even prevent it?
Like, I just can't, I can't wrap my head around any motive or rational thought that would lead people to, like, and from Jody's jailhouse calls, like, I really believe that she doesn't think she's done anything wrong. She was just trying to help the children.
I mean, what are these law schools teaching people about criminals, you guys? So what's the motive for L. Ron Hubbard to drum up being a child trafficker enabler at an industrial size scale? Gee, could it be anything to do with his psychopathy? What was the motive for Charles Manson to order murders that didn't make a shred of sense? Could he just have not been well? Like, in what world are you trying to put this woman whose children were abused in? I mean, if you saw the videos again, right? And sometimes we desensitize ourselves. Oh, we've seen it so much already. Yeah, we've seen it already 100 times. So you know what? See it 100 times more, because all these people do is wishy-washy, throw some soap and bubbles. We really helped save another world, and it's not being saved because these people aren't doing their job. They're only doing their job when they have a ton of media spotlight on them. The case has a ton of attention. And then other than that, word on the street is, rich white women in Scientology, rich white women, Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, rich white women that, send their kids to get abused at the teenage camps. Well, we thought we were helping. What's the big problem? I was helping those kids. I was disciplining them. I was taking the devil out of them. I was, doing all these things that you wouldn't understand because you're too stupid and idiotic and pathetic is what they think of the police. I mean, this is literally what Ruby and Jody were saying. Imagine.
And for reasons that she doesn't understand, God is sending her to be a preacher in prison. So I think that's what's motivating her. Do I think that there's any basis in reality to any of that? Obviously not.
Clark and his
Well, great. I'm glad that they don't see any basis in reality, but then read through the lines and then try and reconcile the receipts, the actions and the words. Oh, could she be doing crisis management? Could she be trying to use the word God as a way to, divert the attention from the facts, to create a layer of sympathy? Because God told me, oh no, I'm getting this vision that I really should lock up a child and treat him in the most unthinkable, inhuman, disgusting, predatory ways. But that's her motive. Her motive was to be an insane, disgusting, deranged child abuser. What other motive can anyone show me? Who would ever leave their children around these women after the facts and the evidence and the ropes and the handcuffs and the skin in these children left them exactly what everyone saw with your own eyes?
team reached a plea deal with both Ruby and Jody, in which they pleaded guilty to 4 counts of aggravated child abuse each. Let's talk about the plea deal. How did all of that happen? Were you prepared to go to trial? Did you decide a plea was better? How did all that work?
The advantage of the plea deal is that you don't have to put victims through the drawn outness of a long case and the difficulty of a trial. and testifying and working through all of those things. So generally speaking, there are benefits to plea deals in victim work as long as you're still getting justice. In this case, Utah law puts a lid on the high end of how much time they could do in prison is 30 years, and so they could have pled to 100 counts of aggravated child abuse, and they still would have been a max of 30 years. So we needed to make sure that we had the ability to get to that threshold so that the parole board can hold these women for as long as they feel like is appropriate. So we got there, and the other part of the plea deal is, well, then there's the number of counts that you work on, but there's also what does the prison sentence look like? Under the Utah sentencing matrix, if you're a first-time offender of aggravated child abuse, there's a presumption that you're not doing jail or prison, that it's just a probation case, which is mind-blowing. I'm not defending that in any way, shape, or form, right?
Thank God. Thank God that he's not defending that, you guys, because I was like, whew, seriously. I mean, everything is stacked against the children. Just notice that. I wonder if that's just by design or by mistake, because the odds are stacked all against the minors, who is pretty much better luck next lifetime. Because again, if the criminals think that they can get away with it and no one's going to come and do anything, then what in the literal hell?
But that's where the matrix was at. Obviously, this is a horrific case, not a run-of-the-mill case. And so what we negotiated in the plea deal was they'd plead to 4 of the 6 counts, and they would agree to prison for each of those, and the prison would run consecutive, so then we get to a 4-year minimum. In our mind, that was a justice was served.
At sentencing, we heard from both defendants.
Thank you to the Washington County Prosecutor's Office, Ryan Sham, the legal assistants and discovery clerks. Eric Clark, you exemplified to me how justice and mercy are meant to coexist. My charges are just. They offer safety to my family, accountability to the public, and they did show mercy to me, to my babies, my 6 little chicks. You were part of me. I was the mama duck who was consistently watering you to safety. I can see now.
You were the mama duck that didn't give a fuck. So imagine that this woman's theatrics here are really being taken seriously by people.
I had a past 4 years. I was in a deep undercurrent that led us to danger. I remember launching into darkness knowingly. I was so disoriented.
I was so disoriented. Imagine pitching you're disoriented while you were literally getting off on handcuffing children. Imagine that any idiot would buy that stupid line that's put there by her on purpose. You guys, I mean, if anyone's not seeing the performance of a lifetime, here's Ruby Franke, the wannabe Julia Roberts.
But I believe dark was light and right was wrong. I would do anything in this world for you. My willingness to sacrifice all for you was masterfully manipulated into something very ugly. I took from you all that was soft and safe and good. I took from you your mother. And how terrifying this must have been for you. I'll never stop crying. You're hurting your tender souls. You're so precious to me. I'm sorry.
During the sentencing, obviously you're there in the courtroom, so you hear from both Jody and Ruby. What do you make of their statements?
Rui's surprised me, and I didn't expect that, because we've been hearing her jailhouse calls, right? So the things that she said, I believe that to a significant degree that was all heartfelt, right? Like I think that she really does feel awful and realize that what she was doing was horrific.
Heartfelt? Ew. Imagine you had a front row seat at evidence that we didn't even see for ourselves. You guys, I mean, literally just what's been released should be enough to not question whether this woman has a heart. Somebody that does that to a child does not have a heart. Breaking news. Predators that do that, once they cross that threshold, how naive, how gullible, how idiotic do you have to be? And if you really do think that it's a heartfelt whatever, then by all means, put your child in her arms. And then let her go to her multi-million-dollar mansion. And if you would really do that, then you would tell us that you really do believe this woman has a heart. But if you're, a little iffy on it, maybe double check if it was really that heartfelt.
We've never had a sentencing like that where someone's gone through and thanked all of the different government actors. And so I was just in there feeling surprised.
Does anybody have a bag to vomit in? I mean,
Felt awful and realized that what she was doing was horrific. We've never had a sentencing like that where someone's gone through and thanked all of the different government actors. And so I was just in there feeling surprised, right? I was like, oh.
so you just thank the government actors? That's just unprecedented. Isn't Ruby so smart? Isn't she so smart, you guys? These women are calculated. These women were caught with their pants down. They were caught in the literal. I mean, that child couldn't have saved himself in any other way. What these women were facing, they knew what in the hell they were facing. Were they confused about what they were facing? Were they checking in with God? Oh, little God, what should I do? Should I really plead? Every calculated move they're making is of self-interest. In what world can any idiot not see through that in these courts of the United States? In what world can you have all the evidence? Are you so scared that a jury is going to go, oh no, find it very reasonable to doubt that the handcuffs and the photos that match and the ropes, but we're all just doing a solid here, and the government people are just so happy because you know what, they've never been thanked. So good. Next, we should have Hollywood giving this woman an Oscar for her performance, for her pitch, for her unique pitch. Doesn't that what Hollywood loves, you guys? Specific pitches. Oh, let's just pitch it like this. Oh, aren't we so great? I would like to thank everyone that really made this happen, because I'm going to start really reverse engineering myself now so I come across likable and I'm really doing what I'm told. Meanwhile, there were plenty of conversations that contradict that this woman gave an F about what in the hell she had done. But imagine all that information is on the public record, and all it took is for her to go, thank you to the government from top to bottom. I would like to thank every single one of them. Damn.
Well, this is different, and we're all trying to have poker faces because it's a big media story. And
poker faces because it's a big media story. And I guess that's all people are after. Media stories. Like, there's 5 seconds of fame is what all of this charade about really wanting to hold these women accountable was about. Not just holding these women accountable, sending a message to all other predators, rich ass predators that may or may not have a hotel, an island, a ranch, a multi-million-dollar mansion for them to do their freak-offs. Because in case this man does not understand what Ruby and Jody were into, that is called a freak off. That is called the child couldn't consent to be locked up, to be humiliated, to be put in handcuffs, to be abused ad nauseum. No child was ever being disciplined in the hands of these two monsters. In what world can you not see that? I mean, literally.
So we expected Ruby to be very remorseful, and I think that what we got was more than what we expected, and probably longer than what we expected.
I sincerely.
We expected Ruby to be very remorseful. Imagine Ruby, the literal disgusting mother that was doing this. And she's so calculated, and she's so conniving, and she's so knowing what in the hell she's doing. And she's got these people eating out of the palm of her literal hand. Damn. Imagine she's outsmarted, right? Because they have all the evidence on her, but they're still falling for her sham of, I really did care, and I really did want to help, and my little kids, and I was the mama duck. I mean, imagine, you guys, that she brings up being a duck. So she calls herself a duck, what we've been calling all Scientology parents, adults who don't give a fuck. That's what a duck is. A full-blown adult that doesn't give a fuck, that'll treat a child in whatever deranged way they want to see that child for their own selfish reasons. And that doesn't just happen with Rudy and Jody. That also happened with Scientology parents who gave themselves that license to be that depraved, to be that degenerate. That's what in the hell is called.
I love these children. I desire for them to heal physically and emotionally. One of the reasons I did not go to trial is that I did not want them to emotionally relive the experience which would have been detrimental to them. My hope and prayer is that they.
One of the reasons you didn't go to trial is because you didn't want to face 100 million years in jail. Disgusting, ridiculous, clown woman that you are, Jody Hildebrandt.
will heal and move forward to have beautiful lives. I am willing to submit to what the state feels would be an appropriate amount of time served to make.
Oh, great, you guys. She's willing to submit. She's willing to submit. Imagine that these predators don't give an F if children are willing to submit. Imagine that they are forcing kids to submit and submit and submit again, and everything they throw and pitch at the kid is a depraved, disgusting game that a child is being ensnared in, that they have no idea what in the hell these monsters are yapping about. But she gets to tell us that she's all about submitting now. So great, Jody Hildebrandt. Glad that you are willing to submit when we already know you are a complete, disgusting piece of shit.
Restitution as an outcome.
With Jody, we could have had an office pool as to how many words we thought she was going to say, because she still wasn't admitting she'd done anything wrong. And we didn't think that she would. Like, I don't know that she ever will. And so what do you say in sentencing if you're not willing to really admit to stuff? So we were curious what Jody was going to say. And then I think everybody, we felt the same emotions everybody else felt. When you don't admit guilt and you say you love the kid and wish him the best, it just kind of makes you want to vomit in your mouth, right?
Clark himself spoke at sentencing and made a stark comparison about the Franke children's abuse.
The state respectfully requests that the court sentence Ms. Franke to consecutive prison terms for each of the 4 counts of aggravated child abuse. This sentence was agreed to by Ms. Franke in her plea agreement and is also recommended by adult probation and parole. She committed horrible acts of child abuse. From May to August in 2023, Ms. Franke and her business partner held her 2 children, ages 9 and 11, turning 12, in a concentration camp-like setting. The children were regularly denied food, water, beds to sleep in, and virtually all forms of entertainment. They were isolated from others and were hidden when people came to visit the house where the children and the defendants were staying.
Now we've seen the photos that were so chilling and harrowing even to look at. And we've seen the videos of the young kids so emaciated and having open wounds. You've compared it to a concentration camp. Do you stand by that?
So I got a little bit of pushback from a super thoughtful person who reached out to us and said, hey, when you compare such concentration camps, you like weaken what happened in the Holocaust. And that's not my impression or intention in it at all, right? Like, I was really struggling because we couldn't release stuff to the public yet. And I was needing to describe what had happened in the courtroom setting. And I had no frame of reference for that, people look like kids looking that bad and being forced to do, because even while they were that emaciated and they were still being required to do physical tasks out in the sun for hours and hours and hours at a time.
Yeah, guys, that's what they did. At the cadet org, we were emaciated, we weren't well fed, and we were being worked to death. So that's what was happening in those war camps. Like, do we need to come up with a, specific name for when the children get put in those conditions? Absolutely. Like, they're definitely gaslighting chambers. What this new breed of Nazi did. What this new breed of extremist did. Her name is Jody Hildebrand. Her name is Ruby Franke. His name is L. Ron Hubbard. His accomplices are too many to name, but they all know their name by themselves. They know that they're guilty of being full-blown modern-day Nazis that weren't into turning the gas inside a room. But you know what they did really get off on? Putting children inside rooms that the child couldn't escape, and then gaslighting the living F out of the child. Manipulating them, bondaging them, locking them up, abusing them for hours on end. It's a crime of power. Power dynamic imbalance that makes not a shred of sense. Who wants to defend that? By all means, start typing a defense. Start making it make a shred of sense.
And the only frame of reference that I have in my mind is concentration camp stories from the Holocaust for that, right? So I don't, and it was religiously motivated, right? So I think that there are some parallels there. I don't want to be saying this was, the
What does it even mean, religiously motivated? You guys, honestly, what does it actually literally mean to have a crime be so-called religiously motivated? Was there rhetoric that pitched the idea? Yes or no? Was there extremist rhetoric written on a piece of paper that pitched the idea to take place? So why does the word religion get brought in as if, oh, it's because of... Seriously, like, what in the literal, actual living hell?
equivalent of that, because they're very different things. But it's hard to find a frame of reference for this, the starvation, the physical demands, the religious nature.
The religious nature, I mean, again, the Jews were being prosecuted as an entire family generational unit. Hitler was having his way with them, not because of a religious thing. So how are children that are being bondaged, that are being locked up against their will, that are literally being covered in open wounds from being tortured, in any way experiencing anything to do with the word religion? Seriously.
It's hard to find a frame of reference because this is just so outside of bounds of what normal society would do.
Both women
It's so far outside the bounds of what normal society would do. Damn, and imagine it gets done at an industrial size scale inside of Scientology hotels and motels and commercial buildings. Imagine that is so far out of the bounds of what is normal that it was, happening at the troubled teen industry, another multi-million, billion-dollar industry. So why do we always get this same pitch about how it's so weird and it's so outrageous? And it's the only weird thing about this, you guys, is there was a 12-year-old little hero that took the steps necessary to get rid of Jody and Ruby. Imagine that. Imagine it took a 12-year-old to save himself. Nobody saved him. Nobody.
And were sentenced up to 30 years in prison, but it's still unclear exactly how long they'll serve for. I know it's up to the Utah Board of Parole and Probation to determine really how long Ruby and Jody are going to spend behind bars. What do you expect as far as how long they really will be in prison?
I don't really have a guess for that. I hope, and I've said this in other settings, right? But I hope that they stay in prison until the community is safe, they're no longer a threat. And the victims in this case are both adult and in an emotional place to where they can figure out how to deal with their mom being out of prison. That's my hope. Whether that happens or not, I really wouldn't know where to guess, anywhere between that 4 to 30.
I mean, their mom. Was that woman ever a mother? Was Ruby Franke ever anyone's mother, or was she just a predator? In what way does she take back the type of abuse she inflicted on vulnerable underage kids who could not consent to her sick power tripping, who could not consent to her disgusting, sadistic ways and choices, decisions she was making because she was, being told by God what to do. Wasn't she so hooked up? Oh yeah, God's coming to visit me. Oh, God just told me this. Oh, God just told me to abuse my child. So, breaking news to all the parents that abuse their children because God told you or L. Ron Hubbard told you. Just notice that these women did go to prison. So imagine that we do have a precedent that the court will not hear your excuse of L. Ron Hubbard told me to do this, so I'm very, very covered and everything is legal. Check with a good criminal attorney. Double check on that fact. If you committed a felony, if you invoke L. Ron Hubbard, does it mean anything? Or is it just the same shit with a different air freshener?
I don't know where the board's going to fall on this one. And I don't know how much of an impact, we'll try to have an impact on that on Jody. Part of Ruby's plea deal is that we wouldn't try to have an impact on that. We wouldn't be submitting information or going up and arguing to the board. With Jody, we will be submitting information. We may be going up and arguing to the board. If we want to see clear evidence that she's not going to come out and try to gather more followers and convince them to do, not obviously the horrific abuse, but just telling people to isolate, telling people to follow her without question. We don't need that in our community.
I mean, that's the first thing that I think I agree with. We don't need that in our community. People that are abusing kids, people that are literally cannot be trusted. I mean, even in the criminal realm, you guys, the criminals will forgive every other criminal for committing any other type of crime except for what? Children and children. You are at the very most bottom of bottoms of bottoms when you have gone as a full-grown adult, taking it upon yourself to utilize your faculties to ensnare said children in disgusting, untenable, indefensible positions. So why are they getting away? Who's benefiting from these disgusting women ending up anywhere near any child? Why would these kids even bother to have anything to do with these disgusting women? Those kids do not need to concern themselves with Ruby Franke. Ruby Franke was a monster and is a monster. And You know what? She didn't gain a shred of brownie point by blabbing her mouth and thanking everyone in the moon to really set the stage for when she was going to go, oh, you know what? I really want to get released because look, I've been saying the right thing since I got here. So how can I get my claws back into more kids and be more deranged because nobody sees through my stupid pitch? I mean, literally.
In the end, Clark says he and his office are still working to cope with the case, finding new ways to see the bright side.
Everybody copes with cases in different ways. I cope by looking for silver linings. There are some cool things about, there's nothing cool about prior to today that the 12-year-old boy escaped, right?
Yeah. Let's not even use the word cool because there are no cool. Literally.
Nothing redeeming before that. But there are a lot of neat things that we get to see when we get to be like in the guts of it all.
But he has duct tape around
Big
his
injuries, there's swords around them.
Yeah, there's sores around him. I think there's a good chance he's been,
And he also has.
oh, and he has it
around
around his
wrist
ankle.
as well.
I mean, his wrist as well. Okay, this boy has been.
Needs immediate attention. Oh, he was such a good kid.
This kid is obviously been. I think he's been.
I think that the ring footage of the couple that responded, they called 911 and they want to remain anonymous, and that is 100% their right, right? Like they don't want to be involved in this, and I'm not trying to draw media attention to them. But watching how none of us are trained to deal with that, right? They just get.
Maybe you don't need a course in humanity to show a shred of humanity. And yes, shout out to them. I'm very, very thankful that they took humane steps to make sure that that child was not put back in harm's way. But to be like, oh, isn't it so great that the child ended up at the neighbor's house? And that's very cool and nifty. I mean, in what world is this cool or nifty or whatever?
It's a kid on their doorstep, and you watch how they try to put him at ease, try to get help there. They're not grilling him. They're not re-traumatizing him in any way, right?
Yeah. Imagine that that's what I would think any normal person would do here in the chat, you guys. Thank God he didn't end up at the doorstep of another predator. In what world is it that hard to be like that around kids? In what world are you not involving yourself in dramatizing one and then pretending that you don't know how in the hell you're traumatizing them? A la Jody Hildebrandt, a la Ruby Franke, a la Mike Rinder, a la David Miscavige, a la Shelley Miscavige, a la Debbie Cook, a la Richard Reese, a la Angie Blankenship, Angie Trent. How many more names do we have to name? These predators have a name. These predators had an identity. These predators operated in a ring of predators. All of them enabling each other. All of them saying, oh, you're abusing that child? Great. You're getting a pass. Oh, great. We have it here on tape. Very a la P. Diddy. Let's get everyone on tape. Let's get everyone compromised. Let's get everyone on blackmail. That's how the program works for these predators. What did Jody have on Ruby? She had all of her kids abused. In what world was Ruby ever going to show up with a shred of conscience, really wanting to, change her steps if she was already deep up to her neck and ears in felonies? Once she really did move the children in that household. So this is all we ever get, you guys. Bare minimum surface stuff. And you know who does not get any benefit from this? It's kids. You know who, sees this and goes, still never going to catch me. I'm so much smarter than those two idiots. My kids don't show up with, signs on their body where the, police can really go, oh, what's going on? Imagine the predators in Scientology hotels were very highly aware that they didn't want to see any marks in us or any signs of abuse. So they use special handcuffs So we would be still bondage. So we still couldn't move. So we still couldn't leave the hotel room. So we still could be just locked up against our will ad nauseum for hours on end. But, you know, if we went to the Clearwater police, they'll be like, oh, a 12-year-old showed up here and he's got no marks. So, you know, he must be full of shit. Bye-bye. Better luck next lifetime. Let's take you back to the predator, Debbie Cook. Let's take you right back to her arms. We know her. She's got us on speed dial. That's how good they have it at the Scientology hotels. They have their LAPD contacts. The ones that they, oh, you know what? Just call that one that we know that Marisol Nichols already safe pointed and is real good friends with us. You know, the head of the human trafficking division at the LAPD. Let's contact him if we got any problems. Oh, and you know, in Clearwater, you know, call the chief, call whoever else they want to compromise. They are not lacking a shred of resources, these people.
Like they're just trying to get enough information that they can get the right kind of help. And then the law enforcement and the EMTs and how they come in and are able to help that boy. And then they go and they spend over 3 hours sitting in the closet with the girl, trying to help her feel comfortable, right? These are children who were completely brainwashed at that time, who believed that they deserved the abuse, that they belonged in jail.
And I take offense with this so-called definition of brainwashed. Is brainwashed a felony? Yes or no? Is brainwashed a felony? Yes or no? Is there a law against brainwash? Because I believe the answer to that question is no. So why in the literal hell are handcuffs placed on kids who did not understand the power dynamic trip that kinky as fuck, deranged, disgusting Ruby Franke and Jody were all about? Now what? Do you all see where this is going? It's like these people refuse. And it's like, yes, thank God the EMTs came in. Thank God all those public servants need to do a job that's very needed. It would be great if they did it better. I'm glad that the ones that showed up did it professional. I'm very thankful for them. But nothing good comes out of this. And it's also showing a message of like, you know, if you're in a very rich community, you know, we're going to think that it's really not happening there. So there's not a campaign being done to raise awareness of this crime. And if we catch you doing this in a multi-million-dollar house, you will face literal justice.
Well, the police were going to be bad and take them away from their family. The hospitals were going to be bad and give them shots that were going to kill them. Like they had been taught to distrust all institutions.
We had been taught the same. It's called not taught. It's called we were literally programmed to be victims. It's called our literal vulnerabilities, our literal gullibility, our literal naivete that we did have for ourselves when we were 12, brought to those hotels to become an interrogator, to be placed in harm's way. It's just not what it's called, you guys. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's not what it is literally called.
And these caring police officers and EMTs are able to help those kiddos feel comfortable enough that they get them to voluntarily come out of that awful environment they were in. I mean, especially the girl in the closet, right? They just wait patiently.
I mean, again, you guys, imagine as a child that young, you've been cut off from the world. We were cut off from the world inside of the hotels. Imagine that we were still longing to be rescued. We wanted to end what they were doing to us in the hotel. We've talked about this so many times with Laura, with Jenna, with Nora. We would fantasize that law enforcement would come in and say minors cannot be inside of the hotel.
You should sit down. It's okay if I just sit here with you. We don't have to say anything if you don't want to.
I mean, the more I see this, the more I want these women put to jail for life. The more I see this, the more obvious it becomes the criminal act that they committed, that they never even admitted to, that they just admitted out of convenience. Because you know what? The bar was going to be lowered as to what they would be expecting. And they made a calculation where if we get this deal here, then you know what? I will be able to get maybe out in 4 years. And since I really going to speak with my best Oscar performance speech, I'm going to really thank the entire world, an entire court, an entire law officer that really did catch me doing this to my own child as I pitch myself as the mama duck.
Okay. I'll just sit here with you.
They just continue to talk to her and work with her until she's there. And it still took her some time, right? Like her initial interview with us, about the only thing she said is, if I talk to you, it's going to make my repentance process harder, which is heartbreaking, right?
I mean, again, you guys, we're talking about a 9-year-old little girl. If I talk to you, it's going to make my repentance process harder. What type of things does a 9-year-old really need to be repenting for? What type of things does a 9-year-old need to be repenting for? Literally.
Right? But the people that were able to show these kids care and to help meet their physical needs and start working on their emotional needs, it's really remarkable when the system can work that way to respond to something that's this dire. And nobody, like I said at the beginning, nobody that was involved was aware that this was going to be a high-profile case at that point.
I mean, again, high profile case at that point. So you found people that were going to do it because they didn't want to be involved in a high profile case. I mean, I think it's almost like an insult to the people that did help you guys, as if these people are doing those unthinkable jobs. I'm not saying those jobs could be easy, having to deal with these type of situations, kids coming out of unthinkable situations. It does happen. It's not going to stop happening tomorrow. It'll stop happening or check itself when the courts of these United States send a clear message that if you do F around, you will find out, and they're not going to go easy on you. And maybe those predators are going to go, oh, well, it used to be easy, but maybe now we have to get smarter. Maybe now we cannot do it out in the open in a multi-million-dollar house. Maybe now we're really going to have to get very, very clever, because they're always going to find ways to work around it. But you know what? Maybe idiots like Ruby Franke would go, well, you know what? They did catch that mom doing that, so maybe I shouldn't do it anymore. Maybe I really do need to stop. It's like, if the law doesn't set that standard, you guys, then what in the literal hell is going to prevent or check these people from continuing to abuse? Because so far, all they ever get is very hard to get any shred of justice for any child. And they are using our situation, the fact that we won't call out our predators when we're 12. We won't go to the court. We won't go to a judge. If this man idiotically asks us a question, we're not going to want to talk to them. We're 9 years old. We don't understand what in the hell is going on in our lives.
They were just trying to do their job and help these victims that they were looking at and that their hearts were breaking for. And I think that's an amazing part of the story. And it's a shout out to first responders, right? But it's also a powerful reminder of how much good there is in neighbors and in people that sit in the back of ambulances for a.
Show me the cases where you're preventing. Show me the cases where you're finding out that you did get told that Jody was abusing a child, and an investigation, a serious investigation was done to get to the bottom of the issue. Is she abusing kids? Yes or no? Is there evidence that she's abusing a child? Yes or no? And then we can all celebrate, you guys. But we're not going to celebrate because people are doing 6-figure salary jobs and then all of a sudden they did the job. So again, yes, all of these people did a very professional job, which is what they get paid for and is what they signed up for. And we're glad that they weren't doing it because the case was high profile. Like literally, I am glad to hear that. I am glad that it wasn't just, oh, they're going to be a high profile case. Let me really take care of this child. So are other children not getting taken care of because they're not a high profile case? Who gives an F if the case is high profile or not? Seriously, who gives a literal F? Why in the hell is this such a high profile case in the first place? Where's the other cases that are not high profile? Why are they not high profile? Why is child abuse so covered up by the media? Why does it take a 12-year-old saving themselves for them to then be willing to cover the obvious?
Living, there's people that sit in police patrol cars for a living and do these hard work. A lot of times they're just such amazing people and they get to really impact lives for good. And that's cool, right? Like that's a silver lining to a really sad story.
Well, there you go, you guys. Silver lining to a sad story in my book would be that adults start being held accountable. Predators start double checking with their criminal attorneys if they've done anything criminal, start coming to their senses and start going and becoming cooperating witnesses. Even if, yes, that makes them implicated. Even if, yes, they have to put skin in the game and not just blab and go and grab a bunch of awards to tell everyone, you know, what a wonderful person they are. Show us the money. Show us you doing something. Show us the effort, because you know what? That is what in the hell really tells you everything you literally need to know. What is the effort being provided in order to really, you know, do something about anything? Their effort will show you the position they want in your life, not their words, promises, or intentions. Their effort. So imagine that the effort that Scientology parents show their kids of how they want them in their life shows them that every last child should want nothing to do with their parents, since their parents are going to pretend that the child's on the same level as the adult. So that's giving unthinkable, disgusting intellectual abuse. That's giving delusional. That's giving delusions of grandeur. That's giving complete and utter predator. How dare you treat a child like an adult? How dare you treat a child like an adult? When my dying 90-year-old adopted mom told me that SA had happened to each of her 6 children and also to me and to her as a youth, I realized how big the issue of abuse unaddressed is. Generational. Thank you, Mountain Tops. Absolutely. It's generational, and it is that curse of actually calling it out. That's what they are counting on. That's what all these predators don't want to talk about, you guys. That's all they are literally betting. Once they stick their fangs on you, they're like, oh, never going to speak about this. I'm sure they're never going to want to speak about this. I'm sure this is going to go to the grave with them. And you know what? I'm glad that a lot of you here are joining us in this mission of waking up and saying no. Literally, that's all we have to say. I was a Mormon for 2 years and my brother's still a Mormon in Utah, and they just don't like to use the word Mormon anymore. Yeah, well, you know, I wonder why, because the brand is getting tarnished, you guys, because they are, you know, being represented here by these two women. And are they the poster childs of Mormonism, these two women? I mean, I'm sure that they're on the extreme, but, you know, in what world was Jody Hildebrandt not promoted as an amazing therapist being shown to all these people? And, you know, literally, I mean, these women are sociopaths. I mean, seriously, you guys, that is what it's called. Sociopath, psychotic sociopaths. I mean, what else could you call it? Ruby's planning. She knew she would sound better than Jody. Prosecutor is messed up with their thoughts on Ruby, in my opinion. Thank you, Lida Pamela. I agree with you. I think I was, when I saw this thumbnail, you guys, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be great. We're going to hear from the prosecutor. We're going to hear how tough it was to understand the depths of the depravity of these women. But, you know, I'm sorry, like sometimes people might be too happy-go-lucky, like trying to find a silver lining in this disgusting women. I'm sorry, but these disgusting women, there is no silver lining in this disgusting women. There is no silver lining to the abuse that those kids went through. I'm glad they are out of that abuse. I'm glad that they are now going to be helped by being away from these depraved women. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to watch because we know the truth. Ruby's just trying to redeem herself, and there's no way that is happening. I mean, again, you guys, it's like they cross this threshold, right? They cross this threshold of insanity. And in what world can they really plead that they didn't cross that threshold? Like, that's really what we're asking ourselves right now. Women who abuse their children do not make many friends in prison. I also think that dad needs to be charged with abandonment. Thank you, DM. Yeah. I mean, I was gonna start watching the interviews of the dad, you guys, and I haven't yet, because like we have to take it in small dosages. Like this specific case has been so triggering because it really does represent like the core of a lot of our abuse that happened when we were like 9 and 12 and 6. And those are the ages that hurt. Those are the ages that you can't quell. Those are the ages where there's no on-off switch for the depravities that took place in our childhoods during those vulnerable ages. I've always said, after 18, after 21, you know, yeah, shit happens. It may not be good. It may not be, but the level of trauma, there is nothing like receiving trauma at that early stage. And that's why we talk about this subject and nothing else, you guys. In the terms of what happened to me, it's about contextualizing and reacting on what's already on the public record, showing all Scientology parents that it doesn't matter that you were calling it the devil did this and the devil did that, that Sinu told you this and Sinu told you that. It only matters what was happening inside of those hotels. For how long was it happening? Who was doing it and who was supervising it and who was signing off on it and who was paying for that and who was recruiting more kids and who was bringing the kids and who was signing on and consigning their kids and what type of monetary incentives were involved. I thank you guys all for holding space and watching, and I will see you all extremely soon. Thank you. Bye.